Hello, I'm Sandra Ashton-Jones and I'm a Head of Adult Services for the City of Wolverhampton Council, and I'm here to introduce this short film about 3 conversations which will show how we've implemented this approach into adult social care and also the key principles behind this new approach. So Adult Services embarked on the 3 conversations journey in 2018 when we agreed that we wanted a new approach as to how we deliver social care in Wolverhampton. So 3 conversations, which we refer to often as 3 Cs, aims to build meaningful relationships with the people that we work with and those people who may need support, but supports them through a series of conversations, which often means that we actually don't end up providing traditional support packages because we've been able to connect people to resources locally in their area, enabling people to feel less isolated and more connected to their local neighbourhood. It's a strength-based approach, and it puts the emphasis on finding out what's important to the people that we're working with, what would support that person to be able to live a good life.
At the heart of our new approach is having a good, meaningful conversation with a person from the beginning and being curious about them and their life. So our approach with 3 Cs is made up of 3 distinct conversations. Which one we use depends on the situation and what's going on for that person. All of the conversations, though, help us to understand what really matters to people and families, what needs to happen next for them, and how we can be most useful. But often the first conversation we might have with someone could be part of a conversation 1, which is all about listening and connecting. We make time to really listen hard and connect the individual and their family to people and places that will help, and they'll be able to get on with their life independently. But sometimes someone may come to us in crisis or needing some short-term intensive help to get back on their feet. And at these times, a conversation 2 may be more appropriate. And this is when we would explore what's causing the crisis, put together an emergency plan, and really stick with that person to make sure that the changes happen quickly and the plan works for them. Making good connections and organising some one-off short-term support was really important for Lucy after she made contact with us. And you'll hear from her now and the support she had from her social care worker Sally and the connections which really helped her and her husband.
And it was 2 years prior to him being diagnosed. And he was doing some weird things. He'd go to bed in all his clothes and put his pyjamas on the top. We'd go out for a meal and we'd lose him in a restaurant. He'd just go and walk away. And just things like that. But it was in 2018 when he went to put my brother a new lock on his door because it had broken. He put the lock on, which was his trade, no problem. And then he just stared at the key. Couldn't get the key out. His brain had just gone. The main difficulties I had with him was, how can I put it? Just could not cope with him. He wasn't violent in any way. It was just that there was no communication of Dennis at all, which was very frustrating, and Sally knows that as well, don't you? It don't matter what we said to him, no communication had come out of his mouth at all.
So my first thoughts were, after discussing with Lucy, to connect her to the carers support team, with my thoughts being around some home-based respite to provide her with a break from her caring role, which I felt was vital. As I chatted with Lucy, it became very apparent that she was a very engaging person, very keen to learn about her husband's condition and perhaps join some groups in order to meet other people that were perhaps in the same situation. So my thoughts went to the community support team, as they would be able to provide information on dementia cafes, and also a group that is held called Memory Matters, And I felt that this would be a very good starting point.
There may also be times when a different conversation is needed, because sometimes people will still need ongoing care and support after we've connected them and supported them in crisis. So this is when conversation 3 comes in. We still listen hard and think about connections and strengths, but we also focus on what any long-term support should look like to enable the person to live their idea of a good life. This was the case with Lucy and her husband in the next part of their story.
Lucy contacted me to say that she really felt that she needed a complete break from her role. So it was at this point that we looked into some respite. Later became permanent. And this was a very hard decision for Lucy to take. But it was the right one, because she was struggling at home with Dennis's deterioration, both mentally and physically.
The positive of it is, I'm going to say, I can try and get on with life. I know it's very difficult, but I can try and just get on with things.
So there are some golden rules we try to follow in 3Cs, which helps us stop processing people and passing them around a system like a parcel. One of those rules is about changing the language we use. There's a lot of jargon in social care that's confusing for people, and we use labels that stop us from connecting with people. So we want to purposefully use words that everyone understands, and remember that labels aren't for people. Another key part of our approach is to bring teams together to collaborate, reflect and support their decision making, and we call these huddles. They may also bring in people with certain expertise and skills that could be helpful in discussions, so that people get the right support from the right people at the right time, and we cut out delay. Ben and Glenford can explain a bit more about how these huddles work in practice in our North locality team.
So a huddle is a platform or a forum where members of the team convene in order to discuss a vulnerable person's circumstance or a situation. So the team or a huddle work together and help each other to make sure that all possible support options and connections for people have been considered. So huddles are opportunities for reflection, which again provide high support as well as high challenge to help or to drive sustainable change with people and families. They are formed by social workers, social care workers, and frontline workers, and also include the managers within those meetings. But what I found is that it does maximize the team's knowledge base. But the good thing about it is that we also now have other agencies or other teams that can join in the huddle, such as community support worker, your carer support workers, your welfare rights officer, a community pathway, your HAP, or the district nurses or health colleagues, and also housing and social prescribing. So having all the agencies on one platform helps by saving time and also ensuring that the person is getting the best service available, and also maximize the person's independence, and also focusing on the person's abilities rather than the disabilities.
I think it does benefit the 3C huddle teams to have housing there, because again we can give our positive input and we can work in partnership, which I think is important, especially when you're working with individuals that are vulnerable. It's important that we are able to give them the correct advice or signpost them to the appropriate people. So I think the 3C huddle meetings is beneficial for all of us, and as I said, particularly for housing, because we can add our extra input from a positive point of view, or signposts, or we can look into any information or investigate a client's issues of what they may need for the present future. So all in all, I think it's from a positive point of view. 3C huddle meetings are very beneficial for us. So from a housing point, I think it's brilliant.
The 3 Conversations approach was designed by an organisation called Partners for Change, and we've been working with Partners for Change over the last 2.5 years. And we're now in a position where we've rolled out 3 Conversations virtually across all of adult social care, and it's working really, really well. We've got some brilliant feedback from the people that we're working with, and also from our workers who really enjoy this way of working. It reduces a lot of the bureaucracy that workers faced previously, but it's very much around being responsive and building relationships, meaningful relationships with people, and helping them, as I said, to live their best life.